Of course, we begin here at home, where barring any last-minute changes, President Bola Tinubu is expected to convene his first Council of State meeting today at the presidential villa. The meeting, scheduled for noon, is anticipated to address the nation's economic challenges and other pressing issues. The Council of State, which serves as an advisory body to the executive, includes the president as chairman and the vice president as deputy chairman. Its members comprise all former presidents and heads of state, former chief justices, the president of the Senate, the speaker of the House of Representatives, all state governors, and the attorney general of the federation. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu yesterday inaugurated 30 compressed natural gas-powered buses, those CNG-powered buses, at the State House, Abuja, aimed to ease the burden of transportation on the citizens brought about by the removal of fuel subsidy. This was as the chairman of Depots and Petroleum Products Marketers Association of Nigeria, DAPMAN, Winifred Akpani, described the formal unveiling of the buses as a game-changer for the transport sector. Tinubu had assured that the buses would help ease transportation challenges faced by Nigerians, especially in the Federal Capital Territory. In the first phase of procurement, 30 buses were acquired from Innocent Motors, an indigenous vehicle manufacturing firm. At the symbolic ceremony performed at the State House in Abuja, Tinubu disclosed that commercial vehicles in Nigeria make up about 80% of the nation's petrol consumption, costing the country trillions of naira monthly.
If we can enhance our energy competitiveness and bring about transformative changes like this, we would definitely be able to achieve the prosperity that we are working hard to accomplish for our people. These buses, along with the CNG and being convertible, is very encouraging and promising to enhance our transportation system.
This is part of what we promised last year. We did say at least 50. Today we have brought 30 buses. That man has brought 20, and another large marketer has brought 10. They are not here right now, but it's a beginning. And you know that the term marketers is quite large. So we are hoping that this will also spur people to, go ahead and bring more buses.
Nigeria is going to move gradually away from very expensive PMS to the CNG that is really very cheap and very affordable to most Nigerians. What this means is that Nigerians are going to be saving money. The environment is also going to be cleaner because fossil fuels are usually less environmentally friendly. The CNG initiative is one that is designed to first save money for Nigerians and secondly also make the environment cleaner and more habitable for all of us.
All right, great developments happening. Rufai, your take on these developments?
So a couple of things. President Tinubu is having his first Council of State meeting, which is, like has been said rightly, it's just an advisory role, and these are people that have served this country in some capacity, Chief Justice, former presidents and the likes, and they sit down and they advise. And I'm sure at the end of the meeting today, barring any last-minute changes, we'd like to see what they will advise him on the state of the economy. And I think probably the area of conversation will also be around, fuel subsidy removal, the impact on the economy, the general increase in food prices, food inflation, the state of the economy, the plight of manufacturers, and a lot. And we'd like to see some of the resolutions they'll bring forward. I don't think the resolutions will be a strong departure from these things we've constantly enunciated on this table every morning as regards, looking out for the very poorest in our society. With the CNG one, it's always good development anytime we hear CNG buses, but a lot of people say, little too late, just 1 year after, all of these promises. If those promises made on the 31st of July 2023 speech is anything to go by, some people have thought those buses were running, but there are many buses now coming in on the stream. You know, this one, bigger one, is going to do a lot of intercity travel. But the question is the availability of the CNG itself. Because once you start to load up a lot of pressure on something, then the availability becomes a challenge. How can we sustain the availability of CNG? I mean, I drive a CNG car, I keep saying, a Nigerian-made CNG car, but the truth is largely, it's not as pervasive and easy to be able to get. So we also need to work on that, and that should be in tandem with the presidential initiative, you know, on CNG.
I learned about CNG buses this morning. 2 wins I see there by the president. Number one is that finally he's had the opportunity to inaugurate CNG buses, and this was said to be one of the ways to bring down the cost of transportation following the policy on the removal of fuel subsidy. The second is that he patronized it's homemade from the factory, Innocent factory in Inewi. And that's something that we've advocated for in terms of being able to use Nigerian vehicles, to be able to invest in Nigerian-owned businesses like Innocent. And so I thought that was a fantastic win in that regard. Now, with regards to CNG themselves, absolutely, the truth is that, yes, there have been analysis around how this will work, how it will be possible. Would the 1 million CNG buses or CNG vehicles by 2027 be achievable by this administration? A few things have to happen. We can talk about the benefits of CNG. Some people have concerns around the fact that when you hear gas, how safe is it? But in the United States, in India, they've used it. It's proven to be quite effective. So number one for this to work is that CNG buses, the purchase of CNG buses themselves are expensive. So in countries where it's worked, the people who purchase the buses have enjoyed government support. So that has to happen. So there has to be some form of government financing in terms of loan and support for people to be able to buy the buses and use them. Ultimately, what happens is that the cost of running the buses, the low cost of running the buses, then makes up for the high amount of money that's paid to purchase the buses. Of course, we talked about it being cleaner energy, so lower emissions means that we're also, net zero. Nigeria is signed up to that, especially with the SDGs. So important to see that the impact on the environment would be excellent. But of course, the number of Nigerians are not looking at the impact of environment. They're looking at how much the impact on their pockets, and this is said to be pocket friendly. Other things, of course, is conversion kits. The president has said in his speech last year that they would roll out conversion kits across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT. So to see this happen would make that success happen. And finally, gas stations where you can refuel and just education, then training. I was going to say the way that mechanics, people who are going to fix these buses, it's a different kind of training required. And it was great to hear the DAPMAN president say that for as many people as buy the buses, they should come to DAPMAN who are willing to train people who are going to be driving the buses or fixing those buses. So congratulations. I hope that we'll see more CNG buses being rolled out.
Absolutely. And for me, the take is, I think this is a step in the right direction, but let's focus on the value chain, because let's remember that Nigeria, of course, has the largest gas reserves in Africa. 33% of Africa's gas reserves are here in Nigeria, excuse me. So it's important for us to also highlight the fact that Innocent Motors is part of this value chain. Jet Motor Company, I believe, was also part of the assembly that took place at some point. 30 buses out of 5,500, a drop in the ocean. However, there was the example of India that was given with regards to the rollout of CNG buses. Now, India is working towards becoming a gas-backed economy by 2030. If that is achievable is debatable. However, for me, I think the conversation we should be having is about building this value chain. How can we extract our gas, manufacture locally, and keep the whole process, the whole value chain within Nigerian borders? Because before you know it, you actually become a net exporter of these products. So a great initiative, and it's something that can actually be a massive pilot project for the entire region if it's handled well. But again, it's all about 30 buses in 1 year, how much will happen in 4 years and so forth. So that part isn't working out. So I hope it can be handed over, or the private sector can take greater ownership of moving into CNG, because it's a win-win for everybody. All right, it's time for us to turn our attention to some international news, as former President Donald Trump has returned to the social media platform X as he attempts to recover from a rocky couple of weeks on the campaign trail. The lengthy conversation, which Mr. Musk said was aimed at open-minded independent voters, began more than 40 minutes late as many users struggled to gain access. Mr. Musk, who owns X, formerly Twitter, said a distributed denial of services, that's a DDoS attack, saturated all of our data lines. Over the chat that lasted nearly 2 hours, the two men talked about Trump's Democratic rival Kamala Harris, the European Union, China, climate change, censorship, and migration. The Republican took the chance to talk at length on some of his pet topics and repeat claims that he's a victim of a political vendetta, while Musk repeated his backing for Trump on multiple occasions. Well, Trump's campaign has taken a hit since Joe Biden stood aside for Harris, leaving 78-year-old Trump the oldest candidate in the race for president. The vice president and her running mate, Tim Walz, have re-energized the Democrat campaign, appearing at a string of rallies in recent days. Now, recent polls have given her the edge over Trump in key battleground states in the Midwest. Unfortunately, that outing was overshadowed by technical glitches more than the content itself. But I've seen a number of platforms describe it as the meeting of two egos stroking each other. So it really, in essence, was that two big personalities came to discuss, each with a cult following. And Elon Musk's agenda was to target those people who were still undecided. And this conversation was supposed to possibly steer them towards Trump. Of course, we've seen what's happened with the introduction of Tim Walz, what's happening on the Harris campaign. Was that achieved? Not really sure about it. A lot of big claims. I'm going to hand over to my colleagues here, but some of the big conversations, of course, immigration. Trump is coming at Kamala Harris on immigration again and reiterating his past stance on being, anti-immigration. He spoke about there's a lot of folks coming from Africa, coming from Asia, and they're not good folks. That's the type of rhetoric we heard from him. He also seemed to imply that had he been president during Biden's tenure, that the war in Russia and Ukraine wouldn't have happened, because he said he wouldn't have signaled such a rapid armament for NATO towards Ukraine that eventually triggered the war. Those are some of my key takeaways, but I know that different things appeal to each of us. So, Rufai, what was your take on
for the very first time in a while on Trump matter, you and I, we totally agreed because I took our time to listen to the 2 hours, over 2 hours of what it was. And it was one of the most over 2 hours of appalling ego stroking I've ever seen in my life. I mean, both of them, couldn't even agree on a lot of things. And Elon Musk, because he wanted that big launch again for his platform, then he went ahead. But I also want to ask, what happens to Truth Social? Isn't Trump supposed to have an exclusive with Truth Social? Because I saw that some of the share prices go down for Truth Social yesterday.
Over truth.
Because when you look at it, it's more about his ambition, and he rolled out some ads yesterday. But it was a lot of porkies, a lot of lies being told there. In fact, he even took a jab at Elon. He said he doesn't believe people should drive electric cars. But Elon was interviewing. He said, Elon, you do a good job, but I don't believe everybody should drive electric cars and all of that. Then he went on as regards lies that, if it was available, that the war will not have happened, really, because you will have been subservient to Russia. And that's just it. That's the truth of the matter. He also went ahead to talk about how he dealt with North Korea. No, he didn't deal with North Korea's situation. He said, I dealt with the situation by calling him Rocket Man, and he knew I had my hands on the rocket too. I could have pressed the button. Really? There was no solution to that matter. Over the years, it's constantly been about sanctions. Then he went ahead to talk about energy prices, the economy is at a bad state and all of that. Really? Inflation is trickling down. Is there a cost of living crisis? Yes, there is. All right? But inflation largely has gone down. And he went on a tirade of abuses here and there, said all sorts of things, said he's the best thing ever since sliced bread and all of that. Yeah, about 80 million of the MAGA people did join in that life. But really, it was very low on policies. Elon couldn't take him to task because he wanted a chart show for himself, for his platform. He couldn't challenge him on most of the things. And that's why we keep telling Trump, go let a real person that can take you to task on most of this allegation challenge in. And Elon too has been warned by the EU. When you look at what is happening, the tensions he's stoking, Trump is just a replica of that right-wing nationalism that came with the movements like America First in the 30s. You think it's by chance he used the name America First? Go and read about the American First group. Go and read about the silver shirts. Read about them.
Well, Trump had an opportunity to sit down with a man who's, without any holding back, declared his support and endorsement of him as President of the United States or winning the elections come November. And so no surprises in terms of the turn that the conversation took with former President Trump having the opportunity to, like you said, talk about some of his policies, his evolving political views, his take on migration, and a few things that were not accurate, but also an opportunity perhaps to get back in the race because it seemed like he had been flustered by the entrance of Kamala Harris. And this was important for him, and that's why out of the few campaign outings he has this week, he chose to sit with Elon Musk. And of course, despite the fact that he also has his own Truth Social, chose to come back to X now that it's friendly waters and also speak to Elon. Elon was very big on praises for him and thought that he would make a great leader. In fact, Elon Musk had offered himself to be a part of Trump's government in the event that he won the election, and offering that he would help to cut help him with his cuts and all that. So it was a conversation between two friends who align on many ways in terms of their outlook on many policies. Of course, there's also the business side to this conversation. Elon Musk is a businessman. He is positioning himself in the event that Mr. Donald Trump becomes president, because we've heard a number of times President Trump talk about EVs and how he's not very big on EVs, and how this will potentially affect Elon Musk, who is also head at Tesla. So a few things there. There's some business alignment. He'd offered himself as coming into his government, said it was good, and then of course Trump said a few things that were not very true. But in terms of the impact, it did have impact. He had an opportunity to consolidate his base, which he had, like I mentioned, Kamala coming into this race has definitely moved him. And he had the opportunity to also speak about the fact that it was a coup against the American president, them bringing her and sneaking her to the back door. Irrespective of that, I believe even more than this conversation, a lot of people are looking forward to the debate, where he will have the opportunity to tell it to her face in terms of Kamala Harris.
And also, Ayo, besides the debate, I know a lot of people are now saying that in the 22 days since Kamala Harris has been announced as a candidate, she hasn't granted any interviews. So we're also waiting for
Which is
Kamala
also
Harris
bad
interview.
for Kamala, because Kamala, it now looks as though she's ducking. She
yes,
must come out and have interview and have the real policy interview.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's also look at what's happening elsewhere in the world, as UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has urged Iran to refrain from attacking Israel during a phone call with Iran's new president. Sir Keir told Masoud Pezeshkian there was a serious risk of miscalculation, and now was the time for calm and careful consideration. This is according to Downing Street. It is the first call between a UK Prime Minister and an Iranian president since March 2021, when former British leader Boris Johnson spoke to Hassan Rouhani. News of the 30-minute discussion came as the UK issued a joint statement with the US, France, Italy and Germany, urging Iran to end its threats of an attack on Israel. They called on Iran to stand down its ongoing threats of a military attack against Israel and discuss the serious consequences for regional security should such an attack take place. The leaders, who spoke together by phone, also expressed their support for the defense of Israel against Iranian aggression and against attacks by Iran-backed terrorist groups. This is an important move because tensions really need to be de-escalated in the Middle East at the moment. There are reports, I believe the White House has also confirmed that Israel has raised an alarm that Iran could attack as soon as this week. And what that spells for the region, for the world, it could be catastrophic.
This is the inequalities and inequity in the world I don't like. Why will Iran constantly take all of the bollocks from Israel, and the world will keep on telling Iran, don't react, because it's Israel? Israel can go ahead, kill somebody on Iranian soil, a guest, whatever you might not agree with it. I don't agree with all the things Hamas does, but the guest of the Iranian government, you plant a bomb there, you kill somebody. Just like Israel did in Syria, where they bombed the, somebody related to the I think it was the Iranian authorities, just like the bombing that happened at the embassy in Iran. And guess what? When Iran decided to finally retaliate, all the Arab nations came together. In fact, America used their defense shield system to shield Israel. Most of the rockets that were targeted at Israel never went in. Maybe one or two of them that dropped in some place, and the casualty was very low. But Israel can go ahead, keep perpetrating all sorts against Iran. But when it's time for Iran to, like they say in local parlance, to do their own back, then the next thing everybody shields Israel. We cannot live in a world of unfairness. And we need to tell the truth. I'm not in support of Iran. Iran's got their own problem. Israel's got their own problem. But action and reaction are equal and opposite. You cannot live in a world that is totally unfair. Now the West, everybody's saying, please don't retaliate Iran. But when Israel was doing all of this in the first place, I'm not saying I support everything Hamas has done. I'm not supposed to say I support what Hayyan has done. But what Israel perpetrated that act, who caused Israel to order? Today, Israel is not afraid. In fact, most of their pilots I hear have been told not to leave town because they might have to react to this attack. In the end, even if Iran finally attacks, what it will be is that all the Arab nations and America will still shield them with their missile defense system. But Israel should watch it. They keep taking the peace.
All right, so I think at this point, what we want is peace in the Middle East. And the UK stepping in at this point, especially this is Sir Keir Starmer's first, perhaps public entrance or his stance on the face-off in the Middle East. And so this was quite an important phone call. And also he said that, he also talked about the importance, that this shows the importance of having an embassy in Iran, something that the US currently don't enjoy. I believe that at this point, what leaders, especially in the West, are looking at is how to get to a place of peace. By stoking tensions or saying, okay, retaliate, it's not going to get us anywhere. And so I didn't expect Sir Keir Starmer to say anything different. Say what you will, yes. At the end of the day, Israel is their ally. They'll speak up for Israel. But what they're looking to do is to douse tensions. And if that 30-minute phone call could in any way, I don't know to what extent that would affect it, but maybe we saw the interventions when the embassy was bombed in Iran and the retaliation, how it was mellowed, it was tempered down compared to what a number of people had expected or what the world had expected. I felt that that was a show of leadership from Sir Keir Starmer, especially with regards to trying to bring an end to this, at least some form of peace in the Middle East. And talking about the effect of a counterattack by Iran on Israel. Say what you may, the truth is that what world leaders are looking for right now is some form of stability in that region. And whatever it takes, if it's a phone call, if it is appealing to the side that would listen, then so be it.
Absolutely. All right, now we'll take our final international story as Russian President Vladimir Putin says Ukraine is trying to undermine Russian stability with its incursion into the south of the country and warns that Ukraine will receive a worthy response. Last week, Ukrainian forces rammed through the Russian border and swept across western parts of the Kursk region. The incursion is Ukraine's biggest across the border since the start of Russia's war in the country in 2022. Apparently caught by surprise, Moscow has hit back militarily by deploying its own troops to quash the incursion. Russia's defense ministry said on Monday that additional forces and resources had arrived in Kursk without elaborating on the numbers. Monday was also the first time Zelensky confirmed that Ukrainian military forces are operating inside Kursk. In his nightly address, the president said war was now coming back to Russia after Moscow had taken fighting to other countries.
Главная задача стоит, безусловно, перед Министерством обороны.
Of course, the main task faces the Ministry of Defense, to squeeze out, drive the enemy out of our territories and, together with the Border Service, to ensure reliable cover of the state border. The Federal Security Service, together with the Russian National Guard, must ensure the counter-terrorism situation and an effective fight against enemy sabotage and reconnaissance groups. It appears that the enemy is aiming to improve its negotiating positions in the future. Well, what kind of negotiations can we even talk about with people who launch indiscriminate strikes on civilians, on civilian infrastructure and try to create threats to nuclear energy facilities? What can you talk to them about?
Подобные акции, безусловно, преследуют главную военную цель.
Such actions are undoubtedly pursuing the main military goal of trying to stop our troops' offensive to fully liberate the territories of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, the territory of Novorossiya. And what is happening on the front lines? What are the results? Not only did the pace of offensive operations by Russian armed forces, volunteers and veterans not decrease but, on the contrary, it increased by 1.5 times.
All right. Well, I suppose what we're seeing is the outcome of that boost in funding and weaponry that has coming Ukraine's way, as they're now able to, increase the intensity of the fighting. And of course, this is also a retaliatory move after the massive airstrikes that we saw Russia implementing on on Ukraine just last week. So it's unfortunate to see that this situation is escalating. And looks like there's no end in sight, because I believe as Russia sees Ukraine continue to move closer to becoming a NATO member, Russia will remain unrelenting. So another delicate situation affecting the whole world.
But the truth is, you see, this is just part of the unfairness I was talking about. You see, when you allow dictators to rule for too long, they feel they're larger than life. Putin started by taking Crimea. He took Abkhazia, South Ossetia, 2008. The West didn't do anything about it. In fact, Obama was pushing for a Russian reset. But you can't keep appeasing a dictator. Like Winston Churchill said, an appeaser is the one that gives the crocodile meat, hoping the crocodile will eat him last. Now you have a Joe Biden, and that's why you can see all what Trump was saying in that interview was rubbish, that decides to stand up to Russia, because if he was a Trump, he would not stand up to Russia with NATO. He was destroying NATO in the first place by saying, no, if you don't pay your allowance, we don't do anything for NATO. That decides to stand up to him, and now Putin is being pushed back. He thought he was going to have a quick run on Ukraine. The war is going into 2 years now. Now, did he think before that the Ukrainians were not going to come into Kursk and the Russian territory? In fact, I think they are delayed for so much. So with America popping the F-fighter jets in and a couple of more funding, you can see the showing they made that Zelensky made recently at the Security Council and a couple of other meetings. Now they are taking the fight to the Russians. So where is the Putin with the mighty army led by the likes of Gerasimov, led by the likes of Shoigu? And they said they were going to crush Ukraine. So what they're just doing is standing up for their rights. But the West cost it all this while because they kept on looking at Putin when he took over Abkhazia, South Ossetia, when he took up the Donbass region a couple of years ago.
All right, well, Zelensky says he's going to restore justice. And to be honest, there's a song that says small, I won't finish the song, in the Nigerian parlance.
Small, big girl.
but the truth is that I don't think Putin saw this coming. And I don't think that Zelensky is obviously acting on his own. He's being backed by the West. And it just shows the interest when it comes to geopolitics of how Western powers control things, especially when it is in their favor. So you're saying that why were they looking when Russia was invading and, invading
South Ossetia,
the territories
went into Georgia, then they went to Donbass.
Yes, when he was invading territories of Ukraine, because at that time it didn't affect them. It was okay for them. But the moment they saw that Putin was becoming a bigger threat than they thought, it's creating a monster, and the monster gets out of hand. Then now they're back in a small territory like Ukraine to enter into. Who would give Ukraine the audacity if they didn't have Western influence? But I'm hoping, of course, like I said with the earlier story, with the Middle East. At the moment, this war has gone on for too long. Sanctions don't seem to have worked. They put sanctions upon sanctions on Russia. It doesn't seem to have worked. So now it is now taking the battle to Russia. And let's see how this would pan out. Russia isn't relenting. They still attacked the capital, Kiev, in Ukraine. So let's see if this would change anything.